view on Iraq, the developing crisis, and the developing crisis of Social Security. Do you know what McCain has said on this?
Well, McCain has said that he does recognize that if we don't do something now to change what we're doing, we're not going to have Social Security for people like me. But he does believe that perhaps we should start with keeping some parts of the system, but also to allow private accounts so that people can choose what to do with their own money in their retirement.
Thoughts?
Well, let me sort of first take the Iraq particular matter. I think Mayor Giuliani, I think like all the candidates, Republican or Democrat, would like to see all of our troops come home. For myself personally, serving in the Army Reserve, I know a number of my friends who are currently serving overseas in both Iraq as well as Afghanistan. As much as they are proud to serve the country, I think they would all much rather be at home here in Hawaii for Christmas. With that said, though, Mayor Giuliani has made it very clear. Do we want to play offense or do we want to play defense in this fight? And whether we like it or not, we're in this fight. We can throw up our arms. We can just completely go home from Iraq and Afghanistan. But whether we like it or not, this fight is going to come to us. So then the question becomes, do you want to be on offense or do you want to be in defense? And do you want to play on the home turf or do you want to play it in an away game? And I think it's much better to be on offense on an away game.
Let me just ask a question. I was thinking today, looking at the governor's proposed budget for next year.
Governor Lingle's.
Governor Lingle's. How much has to be spent on rental housing and infrastructure and so forth? Hasn't keeping the war over there with the expense that has, I mean, saying that you have the front lines over there in this war on terror, which some people say started with 23 people flying into, very radical people representing no nation flying into a couple buildings, that hurts us in doing all of those things, a lot of things at home?
Well, certainly, war is expensive. Freedom isn't free. Trying to protect our nation and making sure that we don't have radicals coming into our nation and harming Americans on our own soil is not going to be easy and is not going to be inexpensive. But I do think it is important that the United States remain on the offense, that we aggressively go out there and make sure that the havens for terrorists and for Islamic radicals are shut down. And instead, we could try and just put our head in the sand and do absolutely nothing. But that is just a recipe for them to come back and hit us again and again and again. And that is going to be far more expensive, not only in dollar terms, but in terms of American lives.
Ron Paul, I was about to say Ron Paul on Kent Snyder. No, Ron Paul on Iraq and on Iraq and Social Security.
Well, Dr. Paul has certainly distinguished himself as far as being against the Iraq War. He voted against the resolution to invade Iraq. He has said time and time again, courageously in my view, that it was a mistake to go and it's certainly a mistake to stay. He did offer a resolution in the House International Relations Committee for a formal declaration of war that was set aside. He would have voted against it. He talks about time and time again where even if you're in favor of the occupation of Iraq and the whole Iraq war, even if you're in favor of that, that the problem is we can't afford it. Empires do crumble, and right now we can't afford it. We are spending so much money that it's beyond comprehension. The interesting thing, I think, about the whole question, about the foreign policy view that Dr. Paul has, is the question is often asked, well, do any of the candidates support the troops? And of course the answer is yes. But to me, the more important and interesting question is who do the troops support? And time again, active duty military, Dr. Paul receives more contributions by a large factor than any of the other Republican candidates. In fact, if you add it up, it's almost he receives more money from active duty military than all the other Republican candidates combined. So I think we should listen to our troops. These people are supporting Dr. Paul's foreign policy.
How do you respond to that, Kimberly?
I'm going to have to see that study.
It's in the newspaper.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Maybe not real one.
Well, New York Times.
Some conservatives would say that's not a real newspaper. How will your candidate deal with the huge amount of spending and debt that the present administration has accumulated? Any thoughts on that?
Well, again, I think looking at Rudy Giuliani's record and what his ability to do, what he had done in New York City. When he inherited New York City, it was a city that was nearly bankrupt, running massive deficits. By the time he left that city, it was a city that was in surplus. Crime had gone down. Government was working once again. I think that's what exactly we need. We need somebody who's going to go in there, take charge, clean up the federal government. I think the United States right now, we're finally moving a little bit in that direction. As you've already alluded to, President Bush has finally begun wielding his veto pen over some of the large appropriation bills that have been going through the United States Congress. What I think we need is more of that. We need somebody who understands how government works, who's going to hold people accountable and sets high priorities and gets the job done. Rudy Giuliani has shown he can do it in the largest city in this nation. I think he can also do it for the United States as a whole.
John wants to know, do you think that Mitt Romney has shot himself in the foot with his recent Mormon speech? Did anybody read that? Any thoughts on that?
I thought that speech was fantastic. I think it reminded us as Americans that we founded our country based on not discriminating against each other based on religion. And so I think he made all Republicans proud because he showed that we accept him, no matter whether he has a different religion from me or not. And we hope that it benefited all of our party.
Other thoughts on this?
I think it's, for me personally, I think I was disappointed that he almost had to do it for the reasons
Yes,
he mentioned.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
You know, I was involved in Republican politics back in Michigan when his father ran for president, ran for governor and then for president. And I don't remember the issue of him being a Mormon ever came up in discussion.
Right.
And I think it's got something to do with the sort of the rise of religion in American politics over the last 30 years that we're bringing it up in discussion and making it an issue. But what is my 2 cents? History, old age. There's a reason we need old people who are around. Did you have any thoughts on the Mormons?
No, I mean, I thought Governor Romney gave a good speech. From my perspective, and I think Mayor Giuliani would agree, Governor Romney's religion is irrelevant to whether or not he's qualified or should serve in the Oval Office. I think Mayor Giuliani would make a better president than Governor Romney would, but the religion shouldn't be playing a factor, and I think I commend him on his speech.
How about if we elect Ron Paul, who will do away with the Internal Revenue Service? Mark from downtown Honolulu said, does he want to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service?
He certainly does. In fact, over the many years, he's introduced a bill to, in fact, do that, get rid of the income tax and get rid of the Internal Revenue Service. Americans would be a lot better off. You and your audience, they know what's best for them in terms of spending their money. And as we've recently discovered, that if you would get rid of the income tax, we could go back to, and we went back to federal spending of about 1990, we'd have enough money.
I think you could definitely win the election if it were held on April 15th. There's no question. And here's a fellow who wants to get involved, gave his full name in the Paul campaign.
Very good.
So there you go.
Thank you.
How will Giuliani calm the rabid anti-choice elements of his party? Will they vote for him or not? I think we've asked that question, but you want to respond to it again?
Will they vote for him? The answer is yes, because again, I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're a conservative or you're a liberal, what is even more important is accountability and leadership, and that's something that Rudy Giuliani has shown that he has been able to do. I also postulate here, by way of analogy, again, myself personally, I have not always 100% agreed with the Republican Party platform, the national platform, but I've been able to successfully win several offices in the state of Hawaii as a Republican. Linda Lingle, the governor of our state, doesn't always necessarily fall in line with all of the national platform.
But we never know, Charles, when one of you local Republicans is going to switch parties next week.
That's we're done. We're done with that.
We just lost. Republicans just lost a state representative this week and a senator a month or so ago.